I have other ideas for videos and topics I want to do here on YouTube, but at the same time, I want to get this series done before the end of the year, because it's already part 28, I'm still in the M's, and it's already the middle of August, so I really need to pick up the pace here. But, yeah, continuing on the best I can. Other than that, what's going to be playing in the background is going to be the Chasm Death Cult for Eternity, one of the best death metal bands that I know of. That here on YouTube, there are so many people that say they enjoy death metal, but so few of them talk about this band. It's just such a crime that needs to be discussed way more. If you love just flashy, kind of like shreddy type of guitar riffs within death metal, the Chasm is just an orgy of that over and over again, regardless of what album you check out by them. But Death Cult Eternity has always been my personal favorite. It's a band you guys should definitely be listening to. Kicking off part 28 is going to be Martyrdöd with their 2016 album, The List. So I used to own a lot more by this band, but I sold all the other records I had by them. Because really, this is like the only album they've done that's like above average. And I mean really above average, actually. As this is a really, really good album that I was kind of late to the party on, because I got this album, I think, a few years after it was originally released. And damn, for 2016, this is one of the best albums I think that came out that year, because usually within crust punk, it's just, you know, the stereotypical riffs, the D beats, the rawness, the angry vocals, you know, same deal all the time. Martyrdöd, right here with this album, it's super melodic, and I can't believe I'm using this word to describe crust punk, but very atmospheric. That's not a word I would ever use for the style, but they nailed it so well with The List, and these riffs and solos are just so epic and captivating that I just usually don't come across those type of components with crust punk, and it's a bummer that, like, in their whole discography, this is the only thing that's above average. Everything else ranges from just okay, but The List, their 2016 album, easily their magnum opus, because they killed it with this album. And even though it's a crust punk album, a lot more metal fans will enjoy it, because, again, the atmospheric vibe almost gives it like a black metal tinge to it in some cases. I don't know, just, it's a really fun album to listen to from start to finish over and over again. But you can get this easily. It was put out through Southern Lord, and people on Discogs are selling it for really dirt cheap, so yeah, you have no excuse not to pick it up if you have the money. As for the layout and packaging, however, you have album artwork, backside, comes with an insert sheet with lyrics, which I think is a complete waste of paper, because, like, I don't know how the fuck you're supposed to read that. Backside with just more nonsense. The LP variant I got comes on crystal clear LP. Up next is my personal favorite within the first wave black metal scene, and that would be Master's Hammer, Ritual, released back in 1991. And while first wave black metal for a lot of people is usually tied within, or should I say more rooted within, traditional heavy metal and thrash metal, because black metal wasn't truly fleshed out for a lot of people during that time until second wave black metal with the Scandinavian countries, I would say for the most part, when you pay attention to the riffs and just the overall composition, it's way more rooted within traditional heavy metal, the riffs on here. However, with the vocals and drumming, it gives off more of that extreme flavor that we're kind of accustomed to within, you know, again, the style of black metal. But god damn, these riffs are so infectious, and the vocals that have like those caveman-like shrieks throughout it just add so much, you know, aggression to it that is just so infectious. It's basically Bathory, but just more melodic, but doesn't sacrifice any of that, you know, just velocity you would want within black metal. Now, this band is from the Czech Republic, and I can't pronounce any of these song titles to save my life. However, I do know track number 9 and track number 5 are my personal favorites within it, because, again, I know I'm repeating myself, the riffs, guys, and again, the riffs on this album, it's just impossible not to bop your head to it. But yeah, again, as I say, my personal favorite within the first wave black metal scene. And as to where you can get this, I don't know if it's still up, because I know from what I've searched up, this band has disbanded, but I don't know if their label that they run, I think called Joe Sound, I think is the name of it, is where you can get copies of this. But yeah, that's the best place to check out if you want to get it. As for the layout and packaging, however, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings and band photo. Comes on a gatefold. It is on a double LP plain black vinyl along with an insert sheet with lyrics on one side, folds out with more lyrics, and the same on the back, but just comes with more additional artwork. I'm missing a handful of albums by Master's Hammer, but another one I do have is their second latest album, that called Formula. Now this album is very, very different from the first two Master's Hammer albums. If you enjoyed the sound of first wave black metal, again, of like, more rooted in traditional heavy metal and thrash metal, check out the first two. I still need to get their sophomore album. But everything from their mid-era to their later era, they really started experimenting quite a bit. That it's not really even, I guess you could call it black metal, but more in the sense of like the experimental realms of black metal. Because Formula right here, there's way more usage of synthesizers. The riffs aren't just so black metal feel, and they really have a lot of detours with experimentation on here. But it's still very engaging and upbeat for experimental standards, and it doesn't really deviate on so much of just, pointless filler material, which is kind of the thing that turns people off, I've noticed, from most experimental black metal bands. And Master's Hammer still keeps it very upbeat and engaging. Well, one thing that's quite interesting to notice here is it says on the back, all songs written by Storm, one of the members, in India. And I think being in the environment of India really had an influence on just the weird kind of like zenned out looking imagery and kind of like songwriting within the album. Because when you look within the gatefold of this, it just really speaks to me like, they looked at all like the crazy type of shit going on within that country and kind of applied it with the experimental take with their writing style of black metal. And it's, again, very interesting, but make no mistake about it, it's still very engaging at the same time. But if you're in the mood for some kind of like left field, oddball black metal, Master's Hammer, their later era, is definitely something to check out. Other than that, I kind of just showed everything with the layout and packaging, but other than that as well, it has an insert sheet with lyrics, and that's really about it, all on standard black vinyl. The last record I have by Master's Hammer is their last album that they ever did from 2018, that being Fascinator. Again, within the realms of experimental black metal, but doesn't lose sight of the aggression and just overall fun factor. That I would say this album is more synthesizer driven for the most part when you listen to how the keyboards are played out, but it still kind of just overall flows really nicely with the black metal aggression that doesn't, again, sacrifice any of that hit that you would want with a metal album from Master's Hammer. However, I would say if you really want to know what this album really is style-wise, it's like a symphonic psychedelic black metal record, which I know it's quite the mouthful, but if you ever wondered what that combination would sound like, Master's Hammer did it with Fascinator. And as the name implies, this album is very fascinating to listen to, because it's just overall fun. Like, that's the thing that always impresses me about Master's Hammer. No matter what style they do, it's just always engaging and fun. And one thing I need to correct myself on is I think I said earlier that the distro that distributes all of their merchandise is Joe Sound, but it's actually Jaho Sound is the name of it. Hopefully you can see it right there. Not sure if the distro's still up, but that's where I got all of my Master's Hammer merchandise. But yeah, other than that, for the layout and packaging, you have album artwork, backside with more artwork and track listings. It also comes on a gatefold with credits inside, and it's just on a standard LP plain black vinyl. Then I have Melbanana Fetch. This is a Japanese, I guess you could call it noise rock, that this is their latest album, I believe, from 2014, and I'd kill for them to do a new album. And I know they've done a few releases after this. I know one of the releases they did a split with Napalm Death, which is quite interesting. But Melbanana, as I stated, it's like an experimental noise rock band that sometimes even borderlines on grindcore how they play. And I remember hearing them for the first time maybe around 2015 or around the time this album came out, and I absolutely hated this so much. The vocalist, her voice is so high-pitched that it literally sounds like something between like Elmo and Kirby. Like, it's so obnoxiously high-pitched. And I absolutely hated it. I laughed at it. I'm like, fuck this. I can't listen to this. And it's weird because over the years I've come to just absolutely enjoy and adore the vocals because it fits like a puzzle piece with the songwriting, because the riffs and overall drumming are just super upbeat and just hyper melodic. And because of this just high energy always just, you know, coming through with their style, the vocals being so, again, high pitched and hyper sounding fit it, again, like a glove. And it just works so well when you get used to it. I know, again, it's kind of like a lame excuse to just say, hey, get used to the vocals and you'll enjoy it. But for me, with Melt Banana, it worked. I know for other people it might not, because I might look like a hypocrite, because I also say that I don't enjoy Inquisition for that very reason. But anyway, yeah, if you want some really, really just hyper upbeat, like noise rock grindcore, definitely check out Melt Banana's Fetch. Because tracks on here like The Hive, Vertigo Gang, My Missing Link, and Lies, Lies, Lies are just so fun. Again, it's a mixture of noise rock and like experimental grindcore that, again, when it comes to Japan, whenever they have the ability to go over the top with any kind of extreme music, they will fucking do it. But as for the layout packaging, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings, comes with an insert sheet with credits and lyrics on the other side. The LP edition I got comes on like this greenish yellow swamp looking color, I guess. Not sure if this is even an official press, because apparently on Discogs it's labeled a bootleg, but in other places it's like a super limited edition. Regardless, this is the color I got. Not even going to waste any time with this one, that being Mercyful Fate, Don't Break the Oath. I mean, what can I say about this album that hasn't already been said? Because King Diamond and company, during their time being with Mercyful Fate, they made this sound their bitch. Because decades later, people are still appraising the living hell out of this. It's a traditional heavy metal classic and forever will be for decades to come. I mean, obviously tracks in here like A Dangerous Meeting, Nightmare, Desecration of Souls, Welcome Princes of Hell, 2-1 Far Away. It's like, you all know this, you all love it, and what more needs to be said? I got this at Armageddon maybe last year or so, because they finally got a copy of this that wasn't already sold. Because I think their copies, when they get them in print in the shop, it sells out the day they get them, so I was in the right place at the right time. But yeah, it's put out through Metal Blade, and obviously they're still really easy to get online, so I mean, just check anywhere and you'll find it. As for the layout packaging, however, you have album artwork, backside with track listings and band members. Comes with an insert sheet both sides with lyrics. The LP edition I got comes in like this yellow-red merge, kind of like Hellfire looking color that looks perfect with the album artwork. It's limited to, I believe, 500 copies. Proceeding on to Messiah, Hymn to Abramelin. Basically just old school death thrash from Switzerland. I know this, I believe it's either an EP or demo that was released in the 80s. Then I got this again at Armageddon for, I think, like half off. They had a sale for it, and overall decent stuff. I've spun this maybe once or twice, and that's about it. So I mean, if you're in the mood for old school death thrash, Messiah is a very respected name, and that's really all I can say about this album. But yeah, if you want it, go to High Roller Records if you want to score a copy. However, with the layout and packaging, you have album artwork, backside with band photo and track listings. Since it was put out through High Roller Records, they got to throw on a lot of goodies for it, because one of it comes with an A3 poster of the album artwork, as well too an insert sheet with a collage of band photos and the alternative artwork. And this LP edition comes on semi-translucent red. I think it's safe to assume that everyone watching this video right now knows of this next record, which would be Metallica's Ride the Lightning. As of right now, this is the only record I own by Metallica on LP, and I need to get Kill 'Em All and Master of Puppets. But, you know, I'm in no rush because they're always going to be available in every record store that exists right now. But yeah, this album is a classic, and it deserves, in my honest view, all the praise that it ever gets. And let me just start off, just fuck off with that weak shit. If you're going to tell me this album and band sucks because it's entry level, they sold out, they're overrated, just shut the fuck up, alright? The only person you're fooling is your fucking self if you're really going to say that. Because this album is a classic for a reason. Tracks on here like Fight Fire with Fire, Ride the Lightning, For Whom the Bell Tolls, which has always been my personal favorite song by them, and Creeping Death. Come on, how can you not love this album? As well too, Cliff Burton, I personally feel like, is really what made the first 3 Metallica albums truly have something of a unique characteristic for them when writing thrash metal. And as well too, James Hetfield's vocals during that time I think were truly at the peak and sounded the most aggressive and passionate sounding. And I mean, yeah, I'm kind of, echoing to the choir now with all the praise that you've heard countless other people give this album. But yeah, I'm not really saying anything new here. But if you want to get this, go to a record store and you'll find it. As for the layout packaging, however, you have album artwork of this very recognizable lightning and chair, backside with track listing and band photos, and just comes on a standard black vinyl. Now for what I would consider a hidden gem within melodic death metal. That would be MyGauss, Open Season. I make it very obnoxious and apparent that yes, I always try to defend melodic death metal whenever I get the chance, because so many people think that it's just all At the Gates, In Flames, and a Modern Moth ripoffs. And yes, I will admit, a humongous majority of those bands fall under that claim. I get it. But I always defend it just because of the small percentage of bands that will prove people wrong. And MyGauss is another band within that very small list that will do that. Because I know I always make it like they're the template, but Archaeon is one of the first melodic death metal bands that comes to mind that proves that the genre can be extreme and hard-hitting. And whereas Archaeon's approach with melodic death metal has a strong influence of that of like speed metal and thrash metal, which they kind of took a lot of influence from Running Wild, I would say MyGauss takes what Archaeon did, but instead of it being rooted in thrash and speed metal, it's more rooted in the fact of traditional heavy metal. It's a bit slower and more mid-paced sounding, but the vocals and overall melodies and riffs are just thick and dense, and God, this album slays for a melodic death metal album. Actually, scratch that. It just slays for a death metal album in general, with just so much usage of melody thrown out within it that it's just, as I stated, a hidden gem because no one I know talks about this, and it's a fucking damn shame because this was actually put out through Night Rhythms Records, which is a really small distro, I think, out of Texas if I'm not mistaken, and this is still widely available to get. Like, I couldn't believe how late to the party I was getting this pressing, and it's just still available. So people, what the fuck are you doing? Get this fucking shit. Because it's limited to 200 copies of the black LP and 100 copies of the red, so 300 altogether. Mine's hand numbered. I got 147 out of 200, and again, it's just it amazes me that this shit is just so easy to get for a really killer melodic death metal record. But yeah, other than that, if you want more of like the I would say more mid-paced version of Archaeon, definitely check out MyGauss. As for the layout and packaging, however, you have album artwork, backside with track listings and band photo, and actually this is the original artwork for the CD variant of it. It also comes on a gatefold with lyrics and credits inside, and one other thing that's quite interesting is that this is a remaster, and it was remastered by Joel Grind from Toxic Holocaust, which is pretty neat. And as I stated earlier, it's just the standard black vinyl edition of it. Up next is Miasmatic Necrosis, Apex Profane. I labeled this as the death metal album of 2020 because even though it's only like 22 minutes long, it's a mixture of like gore grind and death metal. It is just from start to finish just an adrenaline rush of just bloodthirsty death metal that is just so fun to listen to. I would say if you're a fan of like either cock and ball torture or Pissgrave, especially Pissgrave, you'll absolutely adore this record because the vocals have like that crunchy kind of like ugly hiss growl that Piss Grade does attached with it, just more rooted in that, you know, gore grind type of writing, and it's just, again, it's simplistic but just so fucking fun. Another thing too about this album, just looking at the album artwork, it kind of really spills the beans for what you're getting yourself into, because I mean, just literally look at that shit. I mean, if that doesn't scream gore grind, I don't know what else does. And I don't know, I always thought the album artwork looked pretty sick. But this was put out through the label called P2, and this is the second pressing, and they are planning on doing a third pressing early next year. So don't pay you know, scalpel prices for it on Discogs right now. But anyways, for the layout packaging, again, as I stated, you also have this killer looking album artwork, backside with more artwork and band logo. It also comes on a printed inner sleeve, so you have side 1 with lyrics, side 2 with more killer artwork and photography. And this LP edition comes on Oxblood Red, limited to 100 or 150 copies. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention that's really cool about the layout packaging is the inside of it is like all guts and gore right there for the inside of the jacket, which is pretty neat. Then I have Misery Index, Traitors, one of the very first extreme metal albums that I obsessed over when I was getting into this style back when I was in high school. Because tracks on here like Partisans of Grief, Occupation, and Black Sights are songs that I really have a lot of fun listening to, and kind of, it's a bit of a throwback for me in some cases. But the style that these guys play, I know it's labeled death grind, but it's more rooted, I would say, in just straight up death metal. Considering the fact that it reminds me a lot of Dying Fetus, because some of the members that used to be in Dying Fetus around like the early 2000s, they disbanded off of it and they created Misery Index. A lot of the fact too that they got the name Misery Index from the sophomore album by Ass Suck. So their influences are really obvious. So if you like, again, Dying Fetus, Ass Suck, there's a lot of similarities of those bands within Misery Index. But overall, I would say this is the only album of theirs I really like, because everything after it and before it ranges from okay to good. But Traitors has always been the standout for me within their discography. And when I got this at a Maryland Death Fest vendor, I think it was actually the Relapse vendor, had to get them when I saw the artwork. But yeah, that's Misery Index, Traitors. As for the layout and packaging, you have album artwork, backside with more artwork and track listings. Comes with a printed inner sleeve, one side with artwork, other side with track titles and lyrics. And this LP comes on clear vinyl, which is really interesting considering the fact that when it comes to Relapse Records and their vinyl, everything that was put out by them on the clear LP pressing means it was not meant for the public. It was only meant for the people who worked on the album and the people in the studio, like, you know, the producers and all the people who do the layouts. So yeah, this is not meant for the public, so this was quite the score to get. Finishing up within this part, up next is the debut album by Mitochondrion, Archaeon. One of my personal favorite death metal bands as of right now, and I think it's actually ranked up within the top 10 of my all-time favorite death metal albums, because it takes such obvious influence of that of Portal. I mean, it's impossible not to compare the two. However, it's just way more hard-hitting and melodic sounding that I feel like a lot more death metal fans that look for the suit and tie approach to an extent can find a bit more enjoyment with Mitochondrion over Portal. Another thing too that's really interesting about this band is, like, it's still, again, hard-hitting and heavy for death metal, but it's still also very experimental. There's a lot of different textures and sounds and transitions that are kind of, you know, unorthodox to the style of death metal, but still gives it a breath of fresh air. And I'd kill for more material by Mitochondrion, because I know they did an album after this. I think it was released in like 2011 or something, and they haven't done anything since for full-length material. They've been hyping up on their social media accounts for like the past 5 or 6 years that they're going to do a new album, and nothing's come of it since. So still waiting on the third release for full lengths by Mitochondrion. But again, if you want more of like the unorthodox but still hard-hitting approach with death metal, strongly recommend Mitochondrion. This was put out through Dark Descent, so if you want copies of this, go there.
As for the layout and packaging, you have album artwork, backside where all the track listings. Comes on a gatefold. It also includes a booklet with more artwork and lyrics to go along with everything, along with an A2 poster of more artwork and some titties. And this LP edition comes on gold, limited to 500. The last 3 records are all by the same band that I feel like it's one of those like internet famous type of bands, because I know they exploded in popularity about a year and a half ago. I'm talking about Molchat Doma. This is their debut album. So I jumped on the whole bandwagon of praising this band because it is very infectious and just overall well written, kind of like dark wave, cold wave blend of styles being presented to you that really has a lot of influence of that, of like what bands were doing in the 1980s. But it kind of brings it to a modern day audience, and with their whole kind of like Slavic type of aesthetic, it gives them like their own unique style, and I think that's the combination that really started making a lot of people gravitate towards them. However, with the debut album, which I discovered this after their second album, which we'll be talking about in a little bit, I've noticed this album's a bit sadder and just darker tinged and not as upbeat sounding. That really has more of like that depressing vibe to it, but still really good for what it is. And you know, Molchat Doma, more than likely, as I stated, a lot of you guys have heard of this band being talked about somewhere on the internet. As for the layout and packaging, it's put out through Sacred Bone Records, so if you want copies, go there to get them. So you have album artwork, backside with the track listings, and just comes on a standard black vinyl. Obviously, I also have their sophomore full length, which this is the album that really got them a lot of popularity. And again, a mixture of cold wave and dark wave, but the synthesizers and percussions are just so ungodly infectious on here. Again, it's all in Russian, I believe, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it, these song titles, but track 2, 3, and 8. Oh my god, they're so good. Like, yeah, again, I know it's like an internet kind of like famous album, along with the fact too that meme culture kind of like helped propel this with more popularity, but it's just so infectious. It's the album to listen to if you want to get into modern day cold wave and dark wave. And again, I might be a newbie when it comes to this genre, but I know what I like, and Molchat Doma with their sophomore album, I like basically everything presented on this album. Again, put out through Sacred Bones Records, so if you want it, get it there. For the layout and packaging, you have album artwork, backside with the track listings. Comes with a download card that I will keep, and again, another standard black vinyl. Which of course leads to the last record for this part and the latest album, again by Molchat Doma, that being Monument. Yeah, for the most part, this album is good. And whereas the previous 2 albums, they really gave off their own sound of like the Slavic sad boys, as I always called them. This album, again, it presents the cold wave and dark wave styles, but has more of like a post-punk type of overall vibe at some parts, especially with the singing on here. And it's like they're trying to go for more uplifting, and as the title of the album implies, monumental sound that just kind of makes them lose their own style of, again, being the Slavic sad boys, that has more of like an uplifting, monumental type that, I don't know, just doesn't really sit right with me all that much. It's not a bad album, but it's not like the place to start with them, I would say, because again, their sophomore album, that is like where the cream of the crop of their songwriting is. But yeah, still good for what it is. I got it at a Newberry Comics recently because it was a special edition and it was on sale for like, I think, under 15 bucks, so I couldn't pass up on it. As for the layout and packaging, however, once again, put out through Sacred Bones Records. So you have album artwork, backside with band photo and track listings. This, however, does come with a printed inner sleeve, one side with lyrics and the other side again of the band photo. And the LP edition I got comes on gray silver, limited to 300 copies. Alright guys, that'll do it for this final collection part. So like always, links will be provided to everything I've talked about in the description below. And that is that. So like always, make sure you guys drink plenty of water to stay hydrated and have a great day.